Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be doing a countdown video, and this just kind of struck me this afternoon to do something like this, and I wanted to do my top 5 anime of all time. Now, this is again, this is like a lot of my other lists. This is not an objective list. This is a personal list. So if my choices do not line up with yours, it's simply a matter of taste. But I just like to go through my top 5 picks, and then a few honorable mentions as well. And on top of that, I'd also like to state that this is for anime series. So this is, long, either limited or long episodic series, not anime movies. So Akira, Ninja Scroll, the Ghibli films, those will not be on this list. This will be a list of specifically episodic show, either TV shows or OVAs, original video animes. So won't include any of the films. If I do a separate video on films, it probably will include quite a few of those because I do like Akira and Ninja Scroll. But to move forward, we're just going to go in with the first honorable mention. Now, this is basically my basic bitch choice, and this is Bleach. Now, if anybody remembers this anime, it's I mean, a lot of people have probably heard of it, but for whoever watched it, Bleach was done by Tite Kubo, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. Again, for any of these names, if I pronounced them incorrectly, I apologize. But that was one that I really liked the first probably 2 to 3 seasons of the show. After that, it really kind of got stale. The filler was not that great, but the thing that always attracted me about the idea of Bleach is the idea of the swordsman, the idea that was an anime that was entirely based around the relationship between the swordsman and the sword. And that's one of the things that I always liked. It had that, that samurai type of aspect. There was some kind of an honorable reason when Ichigo Kurosaki is fighting people. He tends to try and be an honorable swordsman. And then on top of that, it just has kind of those basic things you always like in anime with the action being really, well, for certain types of anime, I mean, the action being really good. The humor was alright. I wouldn't say it was anything too out there. And I like the supporting cast as well that was surrounded by him, like Renji and Rukia and Chaz and, oh god, I hope I'm remembering his name correctly. But, all of those characters were kind of interesting. The problem was that it basically became the Soul Reaper show after a little while. All the other kind of semi-human normal characters outside of Ichigo were really just kind of pushed to the wayside for the most part in favor of the captains from Soul Society. So that's really kind of where I sort of started to fall off with that series. And then, of course, after the Aizen arc ended, everything after that was just, I mean, they only had like that one season basically, which was the kind of like the rebirth arc. But then they cut it off because the anime was not getting very good numbers. I think they should have probably just ended it at the end of the Aizen arc and just kind of called it there, even though the manga was continuing on to see if maybe it had gotten, more popular, I guess, or regained popularity. Now, the next one, I know for a fact I'm going to get shit for being on an honorable mentions list, and that is Berserk 1998, and was created by Kentaro Miura. Again, I apologize if I mispronounced that. And the reason why it is on the honorable mentions, and I'm going to explain because there's another one on this list that is similar to Berserk in the sense of why I have it here, but it is actually on the numbered list. But the thing is, Berserk was too short for me. I know really what comes after, because really the television, that one singular season, that 1998 anime, that was just the Golden Age arc, which is, except for the first episode. The first episode is where we actually get to see Guts as the Black Swordman, which I think is one of the more entertaining episodes. But the thing is, I always loved that aesthetic. After he, it's good knowing the story of him and Griffith and how all that shit kind of fell together with the eclipse and everything. And once you go through that, though, it's like, okay, like, I really want to see where this goes, because they leave it off at such a cliffhanger when they do it in the television show, and the 1998 one. I'm not talking about the 2016 or 2017 Berserks. Those I can't do 3D anime. It's just kind of weird to me. It feels too much like watching a video game cutscene, a very bad one at that. I still really liked, Guts' portrayal in that, and Casca, and all the supporting cast there with the Band of the Hawk. All of those characters really shined through. Griffith was really good as well. The voice acting was good in that. I like the creature effects. Well, no, I shouldn't say creature effects, but the way that it's drawn, the art style. Which again, that comes from the manga because the manga is very, very detailed, and so was the anime, and it really does show. It shows that they put some effort forth to try and make that entertaining. It doesn't look like a cheap dime a dozen anime. It looks very, very sharp, especially for the time. So I enjoy that about it, but like I said, it's too little for me. I need more. I need more substance than what it actually gave me because I need to see him do more shit as the Black Swordsman. I love the Dragon Slayer sword, but that's in my honorable mentions. My last honorable mention is Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama. Now when I say Dragon Ball, I don't mean Dragon Ball as a series. I just mean Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball series that goes basically up until DBZ starts. That whole first block of Dragon Ball. So, I mean, I really enjoy it because it gives everything more flavor. All the stuff from DBZ that is kind of pushed to the wayside is all the stuff that really got explored in Dragon Ball first and then kind of bled off afterwards. But I do enjoy that original Dragon Ball run. It's funny. A lot of the jokes are very, very funny, especially if you watch the unedited for TV versions of that. All the stuff with all the different characters. Again, you see all the stuff. You meet all these characters that are very zany in a lot of cases. Krillin's originally just like a evil smartass. Master Roshi's always been a perv, so I guess that hasn't changed in time. You get to see how Goku and Chi-Chi met and all this other stuff that it's really, really nice. And it really, really builds those characters very well, so that by the time you get to DBZ and they're just punching each other in the face endlessly, you kind of understand why. Instead of just having that series off by itself, which I'll explain that actually a little bit later. But like I said, Dragon Ball, the original one, you can't go wrong with it. It's entertaining. It's funny. And then, of course, by the end of it, you have those amazing action scenes where Goku is fighting those different characters, especially with the King Piccolo arc near the end, and also the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament arc right after that. So those two arcs really set up a lot of stuff, but I really do like that. Now we're going to actually get into the list after, I've wasted probably like 7 or 8 minutes of your time. And at number 5, and again, some people are probably going to give me shit for this being so high up on the list, or low on the list, is Cowboy Bebop by Shinichiro Watanabe, or Shinichiro Watanabe. And the reason why it is so far down there on the list, it has nothing to do with the anime. The anime itself is amazing. I love Cowboy Bebop. I think it is the exact length that it needs to be. I like the musical choices because it's all based around jazz. The nuances of it, the stuff that Watanabe does with all, the little nuanced stuff with each one of the characters, with Spike and Jet, and Mai, and all the, all their interactions and the way that shit works. And some of those episodes are just hilarious. That's the only thing that kind of is interesting to me. It's almost like an anthology series where each episode kind of is its own little animal in a lot of cases. Sometimes you'll have like those 1 or 2 like throwaway episodes. I shouldn't say throwaway episodes, but episodes that kind of really don't have anything to do with anything like involving a big plot. Like there's an episode where I remember, I think they all take shrooms by accident. And they're just wandering around the ship. So, I mean, there were some moments in that were just really amusing. And again, it kind of shows Watanabe's humor, which is something he would have later on with Samurai Champloo to a bigger extent. But like I said, Bebop is really good. I think it was the exact length that it needed to be. I don't think that needed to carry on, for 2 or 3 or 4 seasons. I think we were okay with what we got. In terms of the completed story arc, it didn't really leave you necessarily thinking. Well, it did, because it actually did leave a bit off on a cliffhanger with the whole thing with Spike and the former organization he used to be a part of in that last battle. It does leave you wondering what actually happened to him, but at the same time, you might be able to solve that with a movie or something like that if you actually wanted to. I don't necessarily think it warranted an entire new season, because I think that was just kind of the natural progression of his arc. But I also don't have a problem with them leaving his fate ambiguous. I think helps people watch the series. And I think if you answer that question, I think you take away some of that ending. Um, and again, that's just me. Again, the voice work is great, and the dub work actually for that series is relatively good. Most of actually the Watanabe series have relatively good dubbing. It doesn't have any of those those crappy ones. But like I said, Cowboy Bebop is a classic. It's on almost everybody's list, so that shouldn't really be that striking. Maybe just the fact that it's number 5 as opposed to a higher one. Now down to number 4 is Drifters by Kota Hirano, and the reason why, because this is the other one I mentioned when I was mentioning Berserk, because Drifters kind of has the same problem of the idea of Drifters only currently has one season, I think a 3-episode OVA that's out. I don't think I've seen the 3-episode OVA, but I have seen the first season. And I really enjoyed it because it was so zany and over the top and crazy, and the world that it's in makes absolutely no fucking sense. It's like you took the idea is relatively simple and it's kind of cool. The idea that you took all these various people out of history and you simply placed them in this one world. To see what would happen. These extraordinary people. And in some cases, they have become like demonically possessed and mutated people because there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But the Drifters themselves are basically, like I said, they're these people that are picked out of history. A lot of them are Japanese history, for good reason. But they have some other ones too. They have like Caesar, Julius Caesar, and Hannibal. They have, I think, Billy the Kid is in there too, and a few like Western guys and some stuff like that. Which actually Westerns are somewhat common, not common, but somewhat popular in Japan. And then you have a lot of people from feudal Japan and feudal Japanese history. So there's a lot going on there. None of it has any bearing on what they actually did in history. Let's put it that way. Like there's nothing in there that I think is necessarily historically accurate. If you're watching it for that, you're definitely not going to get it. But what it lacks in that, it makes up for in really good action. The action scenes in Drifters are extraordinarily well done. The fight scenes are great, and I honestly enjoy the visuals too. The artwork of it is very good. It's done by the same people that Watanabe also did Hellsing and Hellsing Unlimited. So if you're a fan of that type of an art style, it's very similar. It's basically the same because he drew both. But the art style is pretty much very, very similar to that. So if you enjoy that type of an art style, which I do, it's something that you can go there and you can watch with it. The story, even though it's kind of relatively basic, it is sort of interesting to see all these different historical figures kind of interact with this fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons type world with elves and dwarves and shit. It feels kind of like a homebrew D&D campaign. Maybe that's why I kind of like it so much. But that's at my number 4. Now, my number 3 is an anime I actually talked about a couple weeks ago, Yu Yu Hakusho. And that is done by Yoshiro Togashi. And again, I apologize if I mispronounced that. Now, Yu Yu Hakusho had a lot of similarities with another anime that I really liked, which was DBZ, and that is that Yu Yu Hakusho was very much a fighting anime after a certain point. When it starts out, Yu Yu Hakusho is kind of a weird one. It starts off like the first about half season or so, maybe a little bit longer, is more of a mystery paranormal detective type of thing. Where this kid, Yusuke Urameshi, who accidentally dies, he basically gets a chance to come back, and by getting that chance, he then is contracted to become a spirit detective, which is basically just to assist the spirit world in hunting down criminals, artifacts, anything that basically they need taking care of. And he's also given these spirit abilities that basically allow him to do what Dragon Ball Z characters do and like project energy and power up their bodies and shit. He can't fly, but aside from that, basically everything else is on the table. And that first season, again, he meets some characters that pop up again. He meets like Kurama and EA and Kuwabara's in there. Kuwabara is the best character, by the way. Don't argue with me on that. But he was interesting because he was always this like scrappy kind of almost like a greaser type of character. He had kind of, I guess, what you would call maybe like street honor or something along those lines. He was always somebody that even when he was fighting with another opponent, even if he was creative with the way he was doing things, he when he got pissed off, he usually just beat the living shit out of people, and it was actually kind of hilarious when you watch the anime that he just would like when he got pissed, he would just wreck people. But the other thing too is at the beginning, he's really kind of a pushover for a lot of paranormal creatures. I mean, he gets the shit kicked out of him more than a few times, especially early in the anime. So it's not necessarily like a Mary Sue type of thing where he just beats the crap out of everybody. And even when they go back to the when they go to the Toguro tournament, which is the kind of the big centerpiece. I think the anime kind of fell off after that point, sort of like Bleach, where they should have ended it at Toguro, because that was kind of the big thing. He was the big bad guy. He was the one that was built up so much. Nobody ever really kind of got built up to the point that he was. And so many great fights, a really good tournament arc, which you don't see a lot of really good tournament arcs in anime anymore. A lot of it is just random fights and something like that, or like gauntlet crap and things like that. And they don't really have too many tournaments anymore outside of like Dragon Ball. But like I said, I really enjoyed that one. It has a lot of kind of fun aspects to it too, with the way the characters interact. Again, especially Kuwabara. Kuwabara is just an idiot who gets like who can project spirit energy into a sword, and for some reason he's just a complete lunatic. I love Kuwabara. Kuwabara is my favorite character. EA is pretty cool too, actually. I like EA because he just murks people. He doesn't give a fuck. He's basically like Yusuke without any sort of honor system. He just fucking murders people. And then, so that's my number 3. Now we're going to move down to number 2, which is one I mentioned earlier, which is Samurai Champloo. And the reason why and again, this is done by Shinichiro Watanabe, and Samurai Champloo, the reason why I place it over Cowboy Bebop in the sense of in my personal aspect is because I really love the humor, and there's so much more humor in Samurai Champloo than there was in Cowboy Bebop. And when I say that, I mean more of the kind of slapsticky, sort of goofy doofus humor. It's kind of one of those things. You have these two characters really. You have Jin and Mugen, and Mugen Jin is the straight man. Mugen is the instigating asshole, basically. So it's fun to kind of see them bounce things off of each other. In addition to the fact they're both very different types of swordsmen, but they are both extremely lethal at what they do. Because Jin is a Ronin, he's a samurai without a master, and Mugen is just a mercenary who's very good at killing people. And the series has, again, with the trademark humor, the baseball episode is probably one of the best episodes of that entire series, where Mugen just throws fastballs at people and just breaks their ribs, and that's how they win the baseball game. I mean, there's some ridiculous things that happen in that. But the other thing is, again, a lot like Bleach, it's very much a sword anime. It is not necessarily a sword anime that involves the swordsman's relationship with the sword, again, like Bleach. But it's more just two very, very accomplished and good swordsmen and just watching them work, basically. The scenes in that show where they're actually, fighting and stuff like that, and they're just surrounded by guys and they're just one-shotting people with swords. Like, that's what makes sense. It's not like, oh, they're gonna have, unless they actually clash with somebody else's sword, if they have an open shot, that person is dead. Because those swords are just going to carve right through anybody's flesh. So I always kind of liked that about it, which I thought that was kind of interesting. Because usually they like to do those things where it's like, he cut him a couple of times, but he's not dead. He like sliced his side or something like that. It's like, no. When Mugen and Jin kill people, it's just one slice, half your torso is gone, bye-bye. That's all it is, and I love that about it. The other thing is, again, it's a series that, even though it's longer than Bebop, it does not overstay its welcome. I believe it's longer than Bebop. It does not overstay its welcome. It knows what its story is. We have really great moments along the way, but eventually that story was going to have to end in some way, shape, or form. You can't just, three of those characters just can't be traveling across feudal Japan for eternity. It can't go on for 1,000 episodes like something ridiculous like One Piece. So, like I said, Samurai Champloo, that's my number 2. I really enjoy that one. Again, a lot like Bebop, it has a similar thing to me. I also like the music, even though it's kind of, I think it's based around rap mostly, but I do kind of like that. It's an interesting kind of mesh, and it actually works with the aesthetic of the anime, so I kind of like that. And how my number 1, which I think a lot of people probably could have guessed by now who have talked to me, and again, I know I'm going to get shit for this from at least 2 different people, and that is my number 1 is Dragon Ball Z. There is by Akira Toriyama. There is never going to be an anime that will take that number spot for me, aside from Dragon Ball Z. It has everything that you want from a good fighting anime, and it has it in spades. The fights that you have in DBZ are so insane and epic and massive in their scope, and they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not like, at a point it got to be ridiculous. At a point it did get to be ridiculous when you got to like the Buu Saga. But the thing is, the tail end of DBZ, even though it's not nearly as good as the first, 3 to 4 arcs of it, those first 3 to 4 arcs make up for that. Up basically through the Cell Saga, all of that is amazing. I love watching that because even though there's some really dumb shit that happens in the Cell Saga, let's just say that, I like the way that they kind of that they've carried it over from Dragon Ball, that they keep increasing the stakes. Because that's the other thing too, is like Dragon Ball pretty much explored everything related to Goku on Earth in terms of fighting earthly fighters. For the most part, until we found out about Piccolo. But the thing is once you moved into space, once you moved into the bigger universe, it's like Earth is only one planet. And you have to think about how many planets are out there and how many stronger beings there are. Since Earth is apparently the world of lightweights at the beginning of DBZ. So, that also sets up, especially the beginning to the end of the Frieza arc is really probably the best 3 arcs in anime I've ever seen. And I probably will ever see. I love those first 3 arcs. You go through the whole thing with Raditz and then Snake Way, and then you go down to Goku training with King Kai, the Saiyan fight, then the trip to Namek, and finally Goku battling Frieza. And that is the crown jewel of anime fights, is Goku versus Frieza. I don't care what you say to me to try and convince me otherwise. That is the crown jewel. I have literally taken a day and sat down and watched all 8 hours of that fight. I've watched the trimmed version dozens of times. I love that fight. That fight is perfectly done. And then just the way that they kind of interlude it into it, it's like, what actually puts Goku over the edge and makes him become a Super Saiyan is, Krillin getting blown up and Piccolo almost getting murdered right in front of his face, and Vegeta's already been killed, and all of this shit that's just going down. It's like everything seems hopeless, and then Goku pulls the trump card out of his ass, and just that is one of the best things too, because that entire fight up to that point, you basically knew that Goku was fighting an uphill battle. You didn't, at that point, before he actually became a Super Saiyan, you figured everybody's gonna fucking die. There's nothing that's gonna stop Frieza. He's so much more powerful than everybody else around him that he can just murk all of these, what we thought were very powerful characters, at will. And it also showed that he was a menace. That's one of the things I actually kind of didn't like about Super to an extent, is they brought him back, but they brought him back and they're trying to do the villain to hero thing, and that's never going to work with Frieza. He's always has to be a villain. He's never going to be a good guy, quote unquote. The best you can do is a leashed asshole, which is basically what they did at the end of Dragon Ball Super with the Universal Tournament arc. But I think that Frieza being as evil as possible is the way to go, and that made sense for that fight, because it wasn't a situation where you had a fighter who you thought was going to come back, even though he actually did come back, even though Trunks wound up slashing him into bite-sized pieces and then vaporizing him. he wasn't supposed to come back. I don't think he was really supposed to come back after that originally. But you know, he's not meant to be redeemable. He's meant to be the ultimate evil. That's the only way that Goku was able to bring that amount of power out of him in order to destroy Frieza. And everything in that fight mattered to him. Every single thing in that fight mattered after that point. And, to the point where he was willing to stay on the planet when it was going to blow the fuck up. I really do love that fight. I can't say enough good things about that fight. The animation back then for the combat and the fighting and stuff was so much better than it is currently. That never gets old. And, some of the stuff, too, like some of the stuff that Goku did even before that where he's fighting the Ginyu Force, that's one of the best fights in that whole thing, just because he's toying with Burter and Jace the whole time. And neither of those guys realize it until it's way too late. Vegeta is the only one that realizes it because he's the only one that can sense energy. So those two have no idea what the hell is going on. And it's hilarious because he's just fucking with them. That's the other thing, too, that I kind of disliked when they went from Dragon Ball Z into Super, is they kind of made Goku an idiot again. I liked Goku as a kind of more of a journeyman. When he is a Super Saiyan for the first time, he taunts Frieza. There's a few really good lines in it that I always liked where, it's basically where he has Frieza beats right before Frieza tries to do the little mini Destructo Disc thing. And he looks at him and says, "Your power is decreasing with every blow. You're not even a challenge to me anymore. It wouldn't be fair to fight you. Face it, you've been defeated by a fighter who is superior to you. And to cop it all off, he's just a monkey, right?" I just love the way that he became kind of an asshole the first time he became a Super Saiyan, but he deservedly had all those damn lines. But like I said, I love it. It's never going to get old for me. It's never going to get stale. It hasn't gotten stale for me in 20 years. So it will not get. I don't think it will get stale for me in the next 20. I'm always going to have a soft spot for DBZ. It was the first anime that I ever saw on television. I remember I used to watch it religiously when it was on the old Toonami back in the 90s. There's nothing that will ever take its place for me. But that's my number one. I want to know what you guys' number one is, or what your favorite animes are, period. Do you agree with any of my choices? Do you disagree with them? Submit any of your own and, say what you like about them. As usual, put your thoughts in the comments below. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?